This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
The X-Zone TV show with Rob McConnell is coming to screens of all sizes. UFOs, ghosts, alien abductions, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, angels, Bigfoot, unsolved mystery, and all subjects from within the world of the paranormal to the science of parapsychology and beyond. The X-Zone TV show with Rob McConnell, www.xzonetv.com, is a Relmar McConnell Media Company and Benedict Productions production.
Unwilling to be the government's deadly assassin, gifted psychic Kahara Mitchell went AWOL and ended up buried under rubble in the wake of a great tsunami. She regained consciousness far from Earth on the medical ship of a Daguerreonian intergalactic fleet. Has she been rescued or abducted by aliens? The Chalice of Carrie, Kahira O'Donnell's latest paranormal science fiction romance, is the passionate story of an Earth woman and her destined mates, twin kings from another galaxy. Kahara uses her gifts fighting alongside Lords Rom and Ra in a war that will determine the destiny of galaxies. The Chalice of Carrie by Kahira O'Donnell is now available at KahiraO'Donnell.com or at Amazon.com.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back to the X1 Radio Show. My name is Rob McConnell. You probably recognize that theme as the theme of the X-Zone TV show. By the way, my guests this week are Karen Forrest. She's going to be talking about angels. I also have Mark Anthony coming on. He is the psychic lawyer. And then Dana Hayes, who is a personal friend of J. Allen Hynek, will be joining me to talk about UFOs. That's this week on X-Zone TV. My guest this hour is a gentleman that I turn to when I get so muddled up in my mind about what is going on in the world today that I call him and say, Howard Bloom, what in the world is going on? We are just inundated with so much data from every news source available that it's hard to make sense. It's hard to understand what the story behind the story behind the story is. And if you think I'm going to listen to Bill O'Reilly to get the news, forget it. You know, like he's been caught with his pants down more than President Clinton was with Monica Lewinsky, for goodness sake. So joining me now is Howard Bloom. He has a great book out that is so perfect for these days. I call it the Rosetta Stone to what is going on in the Middle East. It's entitled The Muhammad Code. It's available on Amazon.com. And on his great website at howardbloom.net. And Howard, my friend, welcome back to the X-Zone.
Oh, thanks, Rob. It's been a crazy week.
Crazy week. That's. I don't think the word crazy can even give anyone an idea on what's going on. And, you know, if anybody from another planet was to land here on this planet and see what's going on in the world, they put a beacon out somewhere in between the moon and Earth that says, go back, detour.
Caution. Right.
All right.
Well, here, the big thing this week has been Netanyahu's visit to the United States. That has been the hot button issue. And it's been used to camouflage the real issue. The real issue is Iran dangerous? Isn't Iran with nuclear weapons dangerous? Is the deal that's being crafted by Kerry and Obama going to do anything of significance to protect us from that danger? Remember, Iran has a constitution, or was founded by a leader, the Ayatollah Khomeini, who said that a war against all non-Islamic powers would be an absolute necessity and that every Muslim would have to participate in it in order to get to heaven. And he specifically pointed to what he called the barbarians. And by the barbarians, he meant the United States and Europe. And he wanted to topple that barbarism. Part of that barbarism, as he sees it, is democracy. Now, Iran is developing long-range ballistic missiles. They started rolling out their space program, which depends on basically medium-range ballistic missiles, roughly 2 years ago, launching things like monkeys and turtles into space. But those rockets are not designed to carry monkeys and turtles. They are designed to carry nuclear warheads. And Iran has been after the technology for a nuclear warhead since the early 1990s, when it bankrolled Pakistan's effort to get nuclear weapons. Now, you don't bankroll an effort like Pakistan's to get nuclear weapons, a nuclear weapon, by the way, called by the leader of Pakistan at the time, not the Pakistani bomb. He called it the Islamic bomb. In other words, it belonged to the entire Ummah, the entire community, all 57 Islamic nations, as far as he was concerned. But you specifically owe it to your backer, and your backer is Iran. Iran has, when Iranian television first managed to get me to appear on their shows talking about nuclear issues, they were only up to 4,000 centrifuges. Now they're up to 19,000 centrifuges, and apparently those centrifuges are much more sophisticated than the centrifuges they had in the past. The deal we made with them was to disable their nuclear fuel in a way that's easily reversed, so it can be turned back into nuclear stuff, the raw material of nuclear weapons again. Meanwhile, I have followers on my YouTube site who say some fairly outrageous things. One of them says he would rather see nukes in the hands of the Iranians than in the hands of the Israelis. And another says America has invaded countries all over the place. Iran has never invaded any country. He is wrong. Iran has invaded country after country after country. It does it through proxy armies. And right now it's taken over Yemen just in the last month. It's had proxy armies for a long time in Iraq. We've talked in the past about how Iran, in all probability, gave us the phony weapon of mass destruction information that got us to topple Saddam Hussein so they could take over Iraq.
Right.
And they have so many proxy armies in Iraq, which is ridiculous. Then there's Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza, all of which Iran has some degree of control over. They all are manipulated by the guy, the Iranian general, who is leading the charge against Tikrit right now in Iraq. His name is General Brigadier Qasem Soleimani, and he is head of something called the Quds Force, the Jerusalem Force. What does that say about the territorial ambitions? And he's got proxy armies all over the place. That's the way he invades.
All right,
That's the way
Howard,
he
stand
takes
by,
over.
my friend. You and I have to take our break. We'll be right back. HowardBloom.net is the website. We'll be back. Don't go away, Exo Nation. How would you like to be able to read other people's minds? Well, the next best thing is here. When you know how to read a person's name, you know how the person thinks, feels, and behaves. Each letter in our name holds a key to unlock our true essence. Our name contains both our gifts and challenges in this lifetime. Mnemology science discovers personality secrets hidden in the placement of the letters of our names, including the first and last impression people remember about us. Sharon shows us how to interpret the arrangement of letters as outlined in her book, Know the Name, Know the Person. Sharon Lynn Wyeth created mnemology science after 18 years of research and testing her theories, and has supported thousands of people around the world in understanding themselves and others better. You'll enjoy Sharon's unique teachings as she shares her system to learn the gifts behind your given birth name. Even if you don't like your birth name, there are jewels in this book. If you're thinking of changing your name, ready to name your child, or wanting to get along better with others, this is the book for you. If you'd like to improve your relationships and change your life for the better, get the book today, Know the Name, Know the Person, or visit www.knowthename.com. That's www.knowthename.com. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
The X Zone TV show with Rob McConnell is coming to screens of all sizes. UFOs, ghosts, alien abductions, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, angels, Bigfoot, unsolved mystery, and all subjects from within the world of the paranormal to the science of parapsychology and beyond. The X Zone TV show with Rob McConnell, www.xzonetv.com, is a Relmar McConnell Media Company and Benedict Productions production.
Welcome back, everyone. And if you are totally confused about what is going on in the Middle East these days when it comes to Islam, when it comes to ISIS, I have a very simple solution for you. The name of the book by my guest this hour, my friend Howard Bloom, is The Mohammed Code. It's available on Amazon.com or his website at www.howardbloom.net. Howard, you and I have been talking about President Netanyahu's visit into the U.S. I listened with open ears yesterday as the speech was being given. He talked from the heart.
Oh, yes, he has to talk from the heart because this is what is called an existential issue.
Yeah.
This is an issue that could absolutely destroy Israel. You could destroy all of Israel with just one atomic bomb. If you use three, you do an even more effective job. One of the former Iranian prime ministers, Rafsanjani, who is still a very, very important man in Iran, once upon a time said, well, a nuclear war between us and Israel wouldn't matter because we could wipe out Israel with one atomic weapon, and Israel simply doesn't have enough atomic bombs to wipe us out. If they hit us with one or two atomic bombs, we'd still recover. We're a country of 70 million people, and we're 70 times the size of Israel. And he was right. There, once upon a time, to be a good Muslim, you have to follow the example of Muhammad. And Muhammad led 65 military campaigns, and he personally led the charge in 27 of them. And also, he, according to the Universal Sunnah Foundation in Pakistan, he conquered 317 square miles of territory a day. Conquest was his thing. And what he really wanted to conquer in the beginning, more than anything else, was his hometown of Mecca, the city he'd felt he'd been thrown out of. To get Mecca in his hands, he used a very clever strategy. He did not hit the big guy. He hit the little guy so hard that the big guy's knees buckled, and the big guy offered to surrender. And here's how it worked. There was a tribe called the Banu Qurayza. It was Jewish. It lived in a little town not far from Mecca. Muhammad surrounded the town for 25 days. The people of the town said, Muhammad, you are not a barbarian. You would not treat us like this, would you? Well, and finally, after 25 days, the town surrendered. When one of Muhammad's friends came to him and said, look, be merciful to these people. I've worked with them all of my life. They've been very important in my emotional life. Please be merciful to them. Muhammad turned a cold shoulder to that guy. The next morning, he had every single male old enough to have pubic hair brought one by one out into the marketplace of Medina, the town he was using as a headquarters, and had the heads cut off of every single one of them. This was a deliberate genocide. It was a deliberate annihilation of a people, the Banu Qurayza. Why did Muhammad do it? To get his hands on Mecca. When the Meccans saw what had been done to the Banu Qurayza, they surrendered. They said they were willing to do anything if Muhammad simply did not sack, burn, and kill in their town. And they opened the gates to him. Now, if Iran whacks Israel, which will be easy in a few years with their nuclear weapons, what will that do? America will never come to Israel's defense because Israel will already be gone and down and out, and America doesn't want a nuclear war. That's a red line that Obama will not cross, and the next president, in all probability, would not cross. Nobody wants to attempt the annihilation of the human race in a nuclear war. So Israel will go in a nuclear cloud, and nobody will care, in a sense, but they will care. Why? It will terrify the rest of the world. Already we've seen from the beginning of the Obama administration, remember, I'm a Democrat, I voted for Obama twice. I want to think the best of him. But one of the very first things that he did was go to Cairo and try to show respect for the Islamic world. Now, what does that respect 6 years later seem to amount to? It seems to amount to bowing at the knee and caving in to Islam, caving in particular to Iran. Iran's territorial ambitions are obvious. Iran does have proxy armies in 5 countries, and it is trying to develop proxy armies in more. It wants to take over the entire Islamic world. That's a world of 1.6 billion people, spread over a territory 5 times the size of the Roman Empire and 7 times the size of the United States. It's enormous. And Iran wants to be the leader, and Iran wants to be a superpower on a par with France or England. And then beyond that, it wants to take over the world. That's built into its constitution. That's built into all of the statements of its founding father, the Ayatollah Khomeini. So here we have Obama, who's doing something that Anna Freud called identification with the oppressor. In the early 1930s, when the Nazis took over the German government, they did it in 1933, little Jewish kids started dressing up as Nazis and goose-stepping in the street. They didn't know that Nazism was going to mean their utter elimination, their total extermination. That's called identification with the oppressor. When somebody gets to a hierarchical step above you, manages to be an alpha to your beta, manages to put you down into a beta position so that you are subservient to the big guy, then you kind of absorb the values of the big guy, and you take out the frustration of being stuck in a secondary position by beating up on somebody smaller than you. Well, that's what Obama is doing. Obama is bowing and scraping to the world of Islam. If he bows and scrapes to the world of Islam now, think how he or another president will bow and scrape to the world of Islam after Israel has been nuked. People will be scared out of their wits, terrified, and people will do anything to appease the oppressor, including taking on more and more and more of the ideas of Islam. Right now we're doing... Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to ask you for your opinion about these talks that are going on in Switzerland with Secretary of State Kerry and the representatives from Iran. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, Howard, from what I've seen and what I've read and what I've heard, the president doesn't even think there's a 50-50 chance of any agreement coming to term. So why are they wasting time?
First of all, those statements are, in my opinion, false. I think they're designed to make you think that the man is struggling very, very hard in order to get concessions out of Iran, when in fact, nobody's struggling very hard to get concessions at all. Iran is, as I said, 18,000, and it may be at this point 19,000 highly sophisticated centrifuges working every day, constantly turning out, or it has been working every day, to turn out vast amounts of the material it would take to make an atomic bomb. They're up to 20% purity, and the stretch between 20% purity and 90% purity, which is what they need for atomic weaponry, is very small. It's a very easy jump to take. The Iranians went into this with demands for the moon, into this negotiation. They wanted to be affirmed in their right to have a big nuclear industry, and they wanted all of America's sanctions and the Western sanctions against them reversed immediately. Well, apparently we've given in to those two demands, and all we've gotten in exchange is the right to inspection. Now, the right to inspection, to inspect, you have to know where the nuclear weapons factories are.
Right.
And once upon a time, in the 1920s, after a hideous, monstrous war with Germany and a treaty at Versailles that said that the Germans could no longer make weapons, period, never, that they could no longer make weapons, there was a German foreign minister named Otto Stresemann. And Otto Stresemann won the Nobel Peace Prize. Why? Because he negotiated a treaty with the Western powers called the Treaty of Locarno that guaranteed there would never be a territorial war, a war about boundaries in Europe again. Guaranteed it. And the world was so grateful it gave him a Nobel Peace Prize. Guess what else Otto Stresemann was doing? He was building weapons plants, but he wasn't building them in the obvious place. He wasn't building them in Berlin or Potsdam. He was building them in the Caucasus Mountains. He was building them in Russia. So he could have invited in the inspectors to comb Germany from one end to the other with microscopes, and they would never have found a hint that Germany was working on weapons. Why? Because Germany was working on weapons someplace else. And that in all probability is what is going on with Iran. If you ask the Saudis or any of the Arabs, remember the Iranians are not Arabs, they're Persians, about the greatest gifts of the Persians, the Iranians, they will tell you that one of the greatest gifts of the Persians is deception. And just to show you how deception works in Iran, you remember that once upon a time, it was roughly 1988, the Ayatollah Khomeini put a price on the head of Salman Rushdie for writing a novel called The Satanic Verses that the Ayatollah considered to be blasphemous against Islam. And several people were killed because of that fatwa, including the Japanese translator, and the Italian translator was slashed, but I believe lived. And there were bombs in bookstores in Birmingham, a lot of mayhem. In 1998, in order to get Britain to reopen diplomatic relations with Iran, the Iranians said they had rescinded the fatwa. Well, that sounds pretty good. They rescinded the fatwa. Of course we should send ambassadors to them. And the British sent ambassadors. But guess what? They had created a proxy group to maintain the fatwa, just as they have proxy armies in Lebanon, Gaza, and phone. Okay.
Live radio. You have to love
it. Right. So, they have these proxy armies all over the place, and they're using them to try to take over the entire Middle East. And they had a proxy group that reinstated the fatwa, in fact, upped the ante to $3.3 million on Salman Rushdie's head, and maintains the fatwa to this very day. Now, they could say, if you and I were in a room negotiating with them, but that's not our group, that's an independent group. That's false. This group is headed by a man who has been appointed by the supreme leader of Iran.
Oh, boy.
In other words, this group is a puppet. So when Iran wants to continue something but pretend it's not continuing something, it's apparently very good at it. What does that mean, Rob, for Iran's future as a nuclear weaponized state?
Well, it means that no matter what they say and what they do are two different things, because no one will be able to actually inspect with all certainty that what it is being done or what is being said or purported to being done is really happening.
And there's another factor here, and that is you can tell from all of the media coming out of the White House and coming out of John Kerry. They want to claim that they have made a historic deal that has ended a 36-year enmity between two countries and has brought peace to the world. That's the legacy that they want to leave.
But that's not going to happen.
No, it's the same kind of legacy that Neville Chamberlain left.
All right, stand by, my friend. We've got to take our news break. Always great talking to you, my friend. Howard Bloom, www.howardbloom.net. We'll be back on the other side of this news break.
The X Zone TV show with Rob McConnell is coming to screens of all sizes. UFOs, ghosts, alien abductions, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, angels, Bigfoot, unsolved mystery, and all subjects from within the world of the paranormal to the science of parapsychology and beyond. The X Zone TV show with Rob McConnell, www.xzonetv.com, is a Relmar McConnell Media Company and Benedict Productions production.
Do you think you have energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464. With each new extreme weather event or terrorist act, it becomes increasingly obvious that we live in uncertain and challenging times. We all buy car insurance. Why not collapse and catastrophe insurance? Matthew Stein, an MIT-trained engineer and green builder, has written 2 outstanding books to help people prepare, plan for, and deal with everything from minor situations lasting a few days to full-on collapse. Matt's first book, When Technology Fails, is a manual for self-reliance, sustainable living, and surviving the long emergency. This massive book covers the gamut from first aid and emergency preparedness to alternative healing, renewable energy, primitive living skills, and 18th century technologies that could be critical to your comfort and survival in a long-lasting crisis. Matt's second book, When Disaster Strikes, is a comprehensive emergency preparedness handbook and survival guide. When Disaster Strikes is an essential item for every family's go bag. Both books are available at all usual sources. There's a wealth of totally free information posted at whentechfails.com, and author-signed copies may be purchased at mattstein.com. That's www.whentechfails.com and www.mattstein.com.
Welcome back, everyone. What a night this has been so far. We started off the night talking about how hell is really on Venus with Dr. Santini, and then the last hour we were speaking to Professor Joan Mellon on how Lee Harvey Oswald, Clay Shaw were actually CIA assets, how Jim Garrison actually had it right, and that Lee Harvey Oswald had nothing to do with the assassination of President Kennedy. And now we're talking to my good friend Howard Bloom. We're talking about everything from Prime Minister Netanyahu coming to the United States. We're talking about the talks that are going on in Switzerland with Secretary of State Kerry and a representative of Iran trying to bang out a nuclear deal, which I don't think is going to happen. But Howard, over the last couple of days, the identity of Jihadi John has been finally made.
And it's been very significant, Rob, because we tend to operate under the theory that wars are caused by poverty and people trying to lift themselves out of poverty. And if we only gave them enough good jobs, there would be no wars in the world. But the very opposite is the case. It is not poor kids who make war. It's spoiled rich kids. Mao Zedong was a spoiled rich kid. Fidel Castro was a spoiled rich kid. Osama bin Laden was a spoiled rich kid. His right-hand man in Al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri, was a spoiled rich kid. And now it turns out that Jihadi John is a spoiled rich kid. He came from a wealthy family in London. He went to college. He got a degree. It's a degree in computer science. Apparently, he had no difficulty getting a job. He got a job with a computer company. And despite having everything that the view, well, I'm a liberal, so that the liberal view of the world mistakenly regards as the antidote to violence, despite having a job, despite having a good social position, despite having a college degree, he cuts people's heads off. Why? Because this is a hierarchical world. This is a pecking order world, and you can see pecking orders at work in lizards, in lobsters, in chimpanzees, in puppy dogs, and most especially in human beings. And a pecking order works by whoever gets to the top has the right to step on everybody below him. The second in command has the right to step on everybody below him, but not to step on the guy who's number one. So we all want to be number one, and groups have ambitions. People, individuals. This is the most important point. We are not driven by material desires. We are driven by a need of the human spirit. And that profound need of the human spirit is to feel, I think I just swallowed a fruit fly, is to, it was buzzing around my head, is to feel that you are a part of something bigger than yourself. And that something bigger than yourself has a kind of identity of its own. I mean, the United States is a group that has an identity. Denmark is a group that has an identity. Democrats are a group that have an identity. Republicans are groups that have identity.
Sure, you better flush
swallowing
that,
something,
that,
right?
That
to get
fly,
rid of the fruit fly,
you know,
right? I mean, I like killing them, but this is not a good idea.
Well, that's what happens when you do over 800 push-ups. You need to get your protein when you can.
Yes, exactly. So the point is that groups have ambitions. Groups try to rise in the world. If you read all of the literature from Muhammad himself, he will tell you that his group is supposed to be the dominant group in the world, and all other groups are supposed to disappear and be subsumed, digested into his group. If you read the Ayatollah Khomeini, the man who founded modern Iran, he will tell you the same thing. But guess what? We believe that the entire world should be swallowed by democracy and should be swallowed by human rights. Those are our cultural values. Groups have ambitions. When individuals strive to be a part of something bigger than themselves and get the exultant, exhilarating, ecstatic feeling that involves, sometimes by cutting off other people's heads, they are cells in a larger self, and that larger self wants to move up in the world. So jobs don't explain it. The lack of ability to get college degrees don't explain it. What explains it is this group ambition and the fact that our highest need, our need to be something bigger than ourselves and contribute to something that goes on after we are gone, participates, makes us cells in a social organism that tries to scramble, claw, and lift itself up the social ladder.
Can we actually use that example when it comes to ISIS and what they're trying to do?
Well, ISIS knows exactly what it wants to do. It's exactly what was laid out in 628 AD by Muhammad himself. So it's sort of ridiculous to say that it's a perversion of Islam. It's the very essence of what Muhammad himself laid out. It wants to save the souls of as many people on planet Earth as possible. And there's only, saving souls means making sure those souls go to heaven. And when souls don't get to go to heaven, they go to hell. And that's just an intolerable pain, not just for the individual, but for the masses of individuals who are writhing in torture and hell. So if you're an idealist, what do you want to do? You want to save as many human lives so they go to paradise as is humanly possible. And how do you do that? There's only one way to get to paradise. You have to live in an Islamic state. That state has to abide by Sharia law. You have to live according to the rules of Islam. And in the view of ISIS, you have to live according to the rules of Islam as interpreted by ISIS. So your goal is to take over the whole world to save all of humanity. It's very simple. It's idealism that these people are driven by, the kind of idealism that people like you and I also have. It's just that we feel that there are different ways of saving humanity, like, for example, human rights, individualism, democracy, freedom of speech. Mm-hmm. Those are our values. Well, they have values too. It's just they are willing to spread them with violence. And there's an aspect of violence that is extremely important to understand. Violence is a force multiplier. In Germany in 1933, when Hitler took over, he had approximately 34% of the vote. That means that 64% of the Germans wanted nothing to do with Adolf Hitler and voted against him. Do you know why that didn't matter? Do you know why Hitler was able to take over the state for the next 10 years, despite the fact that he only had that he had 64% of the population against him? Violence. He sent his bully boys out into the streets. They smashed windows. They killed people in the streets. They beat people up in the streets. And as a consequence, Hitler was able to take over Germany without a majority in a supposedly democratic state. Violence is a force multiplier and is jihadism, violent Islam. Not all Islam is violent, but violent Islam is using that force multiplier to the best of its ability for a simple goal to take over the world for a simple reason, because it wants to save as many souls as is humanly possible.
All right, so let me ask you this, Howard. If, I have no doubt that there are good Muslims and there are bad Muslims, just like there are good Christians and bad Christians, good Catholics, bad Catholics, and the list goes on and on and on. Why don't the good Muslims gang up and eradicate the bad Muslims?
They're scared to death. Look, the people who are on our side of things, mm-hmm. and there are many, 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 many of them, moderate Muslims, although you know that on Iranian television, I was told by a leading expert who goes on PBS NewsHour all the time never to use the phrase moderate Islam or liberalism. Nonetheless, there are moderate Muslims. And those moderate Muslims want to go about their business making a living and enjoying freedom of speech. They are not fighters, and they are not people who can crush another group that uses violence. It's
just like President Obama.
It's not just President Obama.
I mean just like President Obama.
Well, yes, just like President Obama. The President Obama would like to pretend that the moderate and liberal forms of Islam are the only true forms of Islam. He's dead wrong. The forms of Islam, Muslim was a warrior and a killer, and he enjoyed cutting off people's heads. He enjoyed it. When following the example of Muhammad's life is the template for all pious Islam. Nonetheless, we don't know how many moderate and liberal Muslims there are, but there are tons. In a population of 1.6 billion Muslims, it's anywhere from 100 million to 800 million. We don't know. There aren't any good surveys, any good polls on this. But the moderates are being overwhelmed because they are under the same threat that you and I are. Who really is ISIS killing on a day-to-day basis? Is it killing Westerners? Is it killing those who believe in democracy and pluralism and freedom of speech? No, it's killing other Muslims. Yes, it takes Christians and kills the men and takes their wives and daughters as sex slaves. Yes, it has done that to the Yazidis too, but its primary target are fellow Muslims. And in fact, the caliph, God knows his name, but his name is escaping me, al-Baghdadi. But al-Baghdadi has said very plainly in his speeches, our first enemy are the Sassanids. Now, what does he mean by that? The Sassanids? That means the Persians. That's an old name for the Persians. In other words, the first people he wants to eliminate, the first people against whom he wants to perpetrate a genocide, are the Iranians. So there is this weird war going on in the Middle East right now between the Sunnis, the ISIS are Sunnis, and the Shiites, the Persians, the Iranians are Shiites. And it's a battle to the death as ISIS sees it.
Okay, so here we've got this is a rather strange situation because you've got ISIS who wants to eliminate the Iranians. Then you've got the United States who is out with the coalition to help those get rid of ISIS. Now, the Iranians want to protect themselves and defend themselves and probably get rid of ISIS as well. And then you've got the United States who wants to end the nuclear tension with the Iranians.
It's a tricky situation.
Boy,
2 years ago or 3 years ago, well, in 2010, the Office of the Secretary of Defense, through a forum based on my second book, Global Brain, The Evolution of Mass Mind from the Big Bang to the 21st Century. And they brought in people from the State Department, the Energy Department, DARPA, IBM, and MIT. Mm-hmm. So 2 or 3 years ago, it occurred to me that our real enemy in Syria was not Saddam or Bashar Assad. It was what became ISIS. At that point, it didn't have that name, but it was the extremist element in Syria, which was breeding like crazy. And I wanted to explain to the president, basically, that if we all ganged up against what later became ISIS, we could bring in the Iranians, the Russians, because the Russians are under serious threat from their Muslim minorities who are making constant jihad against them, against the Russians. We could even bring in the Chinese, because in their Xinjiang province, their Muslim population is periodically attacking them and trying to become a dominant Muslim state. So we'd have this incredible group of allies. The difficulty is allying with Iran is a very tricky proposition, because at the same time you have to do everything you can to crush their nuclear ambitions. And so far, Israel has shown the only way to crush nuclear ambitions. When Iraq, for example, was starting a nuclear facility, Israel bombed it. It bombed it out of existence.
Sure.
And in the time that we have been negotiating with the Iranians, I would imagine that they have continued a project that they were beginning several years ago, and that is the project of digging in their nuclear facilities so deep into the bedrock of the ground, so very, very deep, that even our bunker buster bombs could not penetrate, could not get them, that they are immune to the kind of amputation of nuclear means that Israel performed upon Iraq.
So it seems like the peacemakers, and I'm putting that in quotation, really have their work cut out for them.
To be a successful peacemaker, what are the greatest periods of peace in the history of the world? They are periods in which one major power has dominated the world, or as much of the world as it could get its hands on. There was the Pax Romana when the Romans dominated the world. There was the Pax Britannica in the 19th century when the British dominated the world. There was a Pax Americana after World War II when America dominated the world. One historian, Ian Morris, says that to have peace you need a globo-cop, a big guy that can squash any problem as it arises and keep it from getting too big and wildly out of control. Well, a globo-cop is a globo-cop because he has force. He has enormous force. The British had enormous force. The Romans had enormous force. So to achieve peace, you don't just conciliate to everybody in sight. That doesn't work. That only encourages those who want to rise higher in the world, like the Iranians. You need to demonstrate that you have might. And we are not doing that very effectively. In fact, we've lost every war since Desert Storm. We've lost, there have been 2 wars since Desert Storm. We lost it in Vietnam. We stalemated in Korea back in 1951. And we lost in Afghanistan and in Iraq. That doesn't make us look like a mighty power.
What do we need to do to turn the tide? Do we need a president who's a warrior like President Putin?
We need a president who's willing to be a warrior and is intent on being a peacemaker. The great example is Teddy Roosevelt. with his walk softly and carry a big stick. Teddy Roosevelt made a difference in the world. He had a genuine military behind him, and he was willing to use it. And we need to have the same kind of president, because we're coming on a presidential election. In 2 years, this president will be finished. He's been, in some ways, I applaud him for Obamacare, for example, even though it's a Republican program and it's basically a welfare program for the insurance companies. It still is giving health coverage to 10 million Americans who never had it before. But when it comes to international affairs, this guy has been a wuss, and he's been dishonest to you and me. He has tried to cover up. He's tried to keep very silent all of his international negotiations. And I'm sorry, in this country, we arrive at the best solutions through intense debate.
Howard Bloom, please stand by. We've got to take our final break for this segment. Exonation Howard Bloom is my special guest. www.howardbloom.net. And also check out on Amazon the Mohammed Code. We'll be back on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada.
What if someone told you you could live to be 120? Would you believe him? What if he told you the Bible guaranteed it? All you needed to do was follow his rules and buy his products. Would you do it? What if you invested 20 years of your life in him? What if he tested his substances on your child? What if your child became brain damaged as a result? Meet Dr. Tyler Belknap, a fast-talking Texas admin turned health guru. At the helm of a vast health food and supplement empire, he has established himself as the authority on nutrition and longevity. But what his followers don't know is that his products are laced with bizarre psychoactive substances from genetically modified plants developed in his very own secret lab. No wonder his customers can't stop using them. Tyler Belknap will stop at nothing to keep his edge in the market, even if it means experimenting on children. Chasing 120, a story of food, faith, fraud, and the pursuit of longevity, a novel from the pen of political cartoonist Monty Wolverton, is an easy and entertaining read full of rich characters and intrigue. It hits home in a world filled with all kind of hucksterism and offers a glimpse of what can happen when GMO technology falls into the wrong hands. Chasing 120 by Monty Wolverton. Get your copy today at www.ptm.org/120 or on Amazon.com.
Nita Hickok is an expert in exorcisms, psychic warfare, soul healing, angelology, soul retrieval, demonology, energy healing, long-distance healing, astral healing, and much more. Nita is an interfaith minister because she believes all gods and goddesses are valid and that they are part of one divine force that is incomprehensible to us who are incarnated upon this earth. Nita has been doing astral healing, distant healing, spirit release, exorcism, house cleansing and blessings, soul restoring and revival, psychic vampire removal and curse removal, and much more for over 40 years. For more information or to contact Nita Hickok, visit her website at www.astralhealer.com. That's www.astralhealer.com.
Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. howardbloom.net.com.
Welcome back, everyone. Howard Bloom is my special guest, www.howardbloom.net. And don't forget, check out his book on Amazon entitled The Muhammad Code. In my opinion, it is the Rosetta Stone of what is happening in the Middle East right now, and you can get an insight into ISIS. Once again, it's entitled The Muhammad Code. It's available on Amazon.com. And don't forget to check out Howard's website at howardbloom.net. Howard, as always, time goes by so fast when you're with us. So where do we, looking at the news today, my gosh, you've got the fallout and the gloves off between President Obama, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I don't understand why so many politicians are concerned that he did. When I say he, I mean Prime Minister Netanyahu came to the United States and addressed Congress as a ploy to better his chances in the upcoming Israeli elections.
Well, the very existence of Israel is at stake. Netanyahu came here for that reason and that reason only.
Right.
Nobody was making the case. Look, we have not had a substantive debate about this upcoming nuclear deal with Iran and its implications, and it has vast global implications. And Netanyahu did us the favor of reminding us that in our nation, freedom of speech is extremely important, and hearing both sides of an issue, or three sides of an issue if that's necessary, are absolute necessities in arriving at a decision on something. That's the way the democratic system works. That's the way the entire Enlightenment works. And Netanyahu, we talked about this before, but the Obama administration, which promised us transparency, has this tremendous tendency toward secrecy. And secrecy violates the basic principles of an informed citizenry and freedom of the press. Netanyahu did us a favor. He got us to debate about something that was being kept silent, kept invisible to you and me, the Iranian nuclear negotiations.
Howard, having studied the news and society as you have over your many years, how do you see the end playing out when it comes to the nuclear situation in Iran?
Well, I think that the Kerry said in the last 24 hours that the military option is not on the table. I'm sorry, the military option has to be on the table.
Yes.
Because if we want these people to stop not to have a nuclear weapon, then that may be our only option, just as it was the only option for Israel when Saddam Hussein in Iraq was getting a nuclear facility. That option, still, we have to do everything in our power to avoid it. But with it off the table, we have no bargaining power whatsoever, and that's why this upcoming deal is exactly what Iraq wanted to achieve and has nothing of what we wanted to achieve, with the exception of some pitiful and useless inspectors. Useless because they may not be inspecting the right places at all.
See, this is the difference between President Obama and Secretary Kerry. Secretary Kerry has been a member of the armed forces. He knows what it's like to be a warrior. He also knows what it's like to be a politician. Instead of President Obama, who is a diplomatic politician. That's how I see it anyway, Howard. And as always, my friend, I want to thank you so much for joining us. The next time you're with us, we're going to have to talk to you and tell the Exo Nation what you are doing when it comes to manned spaceflight. It's fascinating. Howard, take care of yourself, my friend.
Thanks, Rob.
And always a great pleasure talking to you. Exo Nation, Howard Bloom has been my guest this hour. www.howardbloom.net. That's www.howardbloom.net. And the name of his book is The Muhammad Code, and it's available at Amazon.com. That's it for this segment of the Exxon. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news at 6.5 minutes past the top of the hour as we continue investigating the world of the paranormal, the science of parapsychology, and all matter in between here in the Exxon.